Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. Alongside me is my co-host, Billy Brant. On this week's show, we're going to recap Bellator 144 and recap UFC Fight Night Dublin 2015. And, as you notice from the title, this week, we will talk to main event winner, Louis Smolka, here live on Beyond the Cage. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. He is Billy Brant. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrant21. And how's it going today, Billy?
Pretty good. I'm excited. We got a good show. Going to talk to Smolka here and see how everything's going.
Very excited. Of course, as fans know, we tried to get Luis on before the fight, but I think it works out a little better. We get him afterwards, the big victory, the big performance, and of course, we'll recap all that later in the show. And of course, Bellator 144 had its big upset of its own in its main event, so we got a lot to talk about. And then, of course, a couple of headlines, a couple of injury notes, a couple of maybe a reinstatement happened, if anyone heard about that. And, of course, hashtag Free Nick Diaz seems to be gaining some movement here.
It's actually making a difference finally.
So we got all that to cover on today's Beyond the Cage. So I guess let's get right into it here. As I mentioned, he is fresh off his victory at UFC Fight Night Dublin. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Last Samurai UFC, and he is Mr. Louis Smolka. And Luis, if we got you here, if you can hear me, thanks for coming on the show again.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, let's get right into it here, Luis. Main event winner. How good does it sound that you got to main event a UFC card?
It was pretty awesome. Like, I just, honestly, I tried to not let it, like, overwhelm me in the moment, you know? I didn't want to just be freaking out the entire time and, you know, like, let the nerves get to me, you know?
Now, of course, this fight was in Ireland, so what did you get to do and see while you were in Ireland?
But looking back, it was pretty surreal. I can't believe I actually went out there and did that. I got to I got to go see a castle, which was pretty cool. I got to go look around at the tourist district mostly, since that's where the hotel was, and we were just trying to walk around, keep my metabolism up, make sure I was burning fat throughout the week. So I was just walking around a lot and just going to whatever was near our hotel, and I got to go see just mostly a lot of tourist things. I think it was called Grafton Street. I spent a lot of time over there. It was pretty cool.
All right. Now, of course, you were in Ireland again, as I said, and because you were cutting weight and whatnot, I'm sure it was probably pretty hard for you to go into a authentic Irish pub and drink a beer, right?
Yeah, something I really wanted to do, but I ended up not having too much time for it. I finally got to have a Guinness at the airport, and it was way better than the Guinness in Hawaii. It was so much smoother.
Of course, Ireland is also known for their corned beef and cabbage. So did you have any of that while you were there?
No, I didn't get the chance. I wish, though. I was hoping to, get a chance to do all the, sample all the local foods and stuff, but I didn't have time.
Now, of course, you were fighting the hometown guy there in Paddy Houlihan. So while you're walking around town and stuff, did you get any animosity from the Irish fans?
No, they were actually pretty cool. Surprisingly, they were pretty nice about it. They were kind of honest though. They're "Oh man, we kind of cheer for our hometown boy," but they were pretty cool.
Now, in this fight, were you expecting Houlihan to come out early and often and grapple with you?
Yeah, I thought he would try to strike a little bit more, but he just really wanted to go to the ground. We game planned for him pretty thoroughly. We covered most of his grappling exchanges. A lot of them I was prepared for, and I was pretty happy with how the fight played out.
Now, do you feel with this fight here against Houlihan that you proved to the division, and I'm sure you're confident of your own skills before this, but you kind of proved that if people thought grappling was a weakness, that maybe that's not the case anymore?
Yeah, I've always had a lot of confidence in my grappling. I actually started out as a grappler, and I'm very confident in it. I don't really have a lot of jujitsu experience, like traditional jujitsu experience, but I have a lot of grappling experience. Like, when I was little, like I knew what an armbar, a rear naked, and a guillotine were since I've been like 7. I knew the positions, mount, guard, half guard, side. I knew all of those since I've been really young. So I've always like been pretty familiar with grappling.
Now, did Houlihan do anything in this fight to surprise you, Luis?
Not really. We kind of thought that most of these things would happen. I thought he would try to stand a little bit longer, but yeah, that was about the only surprise. I just thought he would try to stand. There was some Conor McGregor-like stuff.
As you mentioned earlier, you were prepared for him to go with the grappling attack. And were you kind of waiting for that one moment where you could kind of flip the tables on him and make the fight with you being on the offensive?
I wouldn't say I was waiting for just one opportunity. I was trying initially first. I was just surprised at like the urgency he had on the grappling. So I was kind of just going with his flow, trying to see like what he was trying to do. And then in between rounds, my corner Charles Lee and Russell Doan, and Max Holloway, they were all telling me I had to stay on top during the grappling exchanges. Like they wanted me on top. They didn't want him to get like any more good positions. So the whole next round, I was really trying to stay on top. He ended up catching my back, but once I worked out of that, I was really trying to stay on top in the scrambles. And yeah, like I was trying to get damage there. I was really trying to hurt him.
After you won and you raised your arms in victory after you got the choke and the referee got you off of Houlihan, the crowd there in Dublin just went dead silent. And that's a very unique experience in sports. And I was wondering, have you ever experienced something like that firsthand before?
Well, one time when I fought in the Philippines, when I won a belt out there and I beat their hometown boy, like there was maybe like 3,000 or 4,000 people in the arena. They all just left. Well, actually, no, they didn't all leave. Half of them left, and the other half wanted to take pictures and were like mauling me outside of the cage. So it's been pretty interesting.
Let's get to your next fight here, Luis. At least, who would you like to fight for your next fight, I should say?
Not really. I don't particularly care. I just want somebody in the top 15. I'm trying to, get some big wins. I'm trying to go on a title run, hopefully, at some point.
All right, I'll throw out a couple of names for you that Billy and I thought that might be a good matchup for you coming up. Sergio Pettis and Ray Borg. Any thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, I suppose. To be honest, I was thinking, I read a bunch of things that like they're gonna try to match me with contenders just because it's gonna like kill a star. They don't want to match me with too many prospects too early because Demetrius needs title challengers.
Jim Gramm and Billy Brant here on Beyond the Cage. We were talking with the last samurai, Louis Smolka, here on Beyond the Cage, fresh off his main event victory over Paddy Houlihan at UFC Fight Night Dublin last weekend in Ireland. And Luis, before we came on the show, Billy and I were doing some research, and we saw on your Instagram page that you were doing an Instagram contest. So I was wondering if you could kind of let some of our listeners know what's going on with that.
But I don't really care who I fight next. I'd fight either of them. They're kind of opposite fighters, but I wouldn't really care.
I think he was stuck on the last question there. Yeah, what about the contest, though?
Well, I'm giving out 3 signed posters from my event, from my fights last weekend, and I'm gonna, basically you have until 4 o'clock Hawaii time, so it's another like 3.5 hours or so, 4.5 hours, something like that. But all you have to do is repost my last post for the contest, Put the hashtag Smolka Defense Soap giveaway and follow myself and Defense Soap on Instagram. They've been one of my sponsors. They've been helping me out a lot. I wanted to show them some love, you know?
Absolutely, Luis. And looking at the poster, if you see the picture there on his Instagram account, again, at Last Samurai UFC, your picture's there up close and personal. And how cool is it to finally have your picture on a UFC fight poster?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I think that's the first poster that I've seen that I was actually like on the poster. Yeah, it was a pretty surreal feeling. I'm like super excited about it.
Now, of course, the last fight you had was back in July, which was the first time you and everybody in the UFC got a chance to see and wear the Reebok gear. And I was wondering now, the second time you got to wear Reebok, how did it go the second time around with that?
They gave us a different set of like underwear this time. I was like super, super tight. It had like these like thigh elastics, and it would like it was just like really, really tight. They hemmed it for me and made it looser, but yeah, that was kind of interesting to me how tight that underwear is.
As I just mentioned, your last fight was in July, and that coincidentally is the last time we had you on the show. So I was wondering how the rest of your summer went here for 2015.
Okay. Well, I had my birthday, my manager's birthday, one of my close friends, Russell's, on his birthday. We all had it at the same time. My coach, Charles Keefe, my head coach, he had his birthday too. So it's been fun. The rest of summer was super awesome. It's kind of interesting that like my whole team, there's like a month stretch where it's like someone's birthday every like couple days. Like I think there is like a 4-day stretch in July where it's like my birthday, my teammate Edward's birthday, and like a couple of my other teammates. We all have birthdays, and then it's Charles's birthday on like the 19th. So there's like a 4-day stretch where we're all having like parties and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Of course, coming up this weekend is Halloween. So I wonder what your Halloween plans are and what your costume is going to be for this weekend.
I'm gonna dress up as world's greatest MMA fighter. You can guess who that is. I've been doing that every year since I started fighting. I don't even dress up, and then I just like say that just to mess around. But I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I know my girlfriend, she's gonna dress up. So I don't know, maybe she wants to do something. I'm not 100% sure what's going on yet.
All right. I wanted to ask you, since somehow surprisingly I've never actually asked you this before, considering we've had you on the show several times, but of course you're from Hawaii, so I was wondering, have you seen the new Hawaii 5-0 series at all?
I have never even watched the show. I've never watched it. I'm not into like crime dramas and stuff. I like comedies. You know, I'm really big into like The League, Bob's Burgers, Rick and Morty, like just like funny shows, Archer, like things like that. That's what I like to watch. I like to watch stand-ups too.
All right. Serious question time here. Who is your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, Luis?
My favorite Ninja Turtle. I think it was Donatello because he was the smart one. He makes all the gadgets and stuff. I always liked that. I thought that was cool.
All right, last question, Luis. I'll get you out of here with this. Of course, he was on hand to see your main event victory in Dublin, Ireland, that being the fellow Hawaiian, Max Holloway. He has a big fight coming up in December against Jeremy Stevens. So I wanted to get your thoughts on Max going up against Jeremy here.
I think he's gonna do great. You know, Max is the truth, man. I know we all talk like, oh yeah, I'm the greatest fighter ever. I'm gonna beat this guy. I'm gonna beat that guy. I'm gonna take this guy out. Like, look, Max is the guy that just goes out there and does it. Like, no fear, just goes out there and just beats people. So I have the utmost faith in Max. I think I think he's going to be able to take Jeremy out. I know Jeremy is dangerous because he can just touch you and knock you out, but I think Max got it.
He is the last samurai, Louis Smolka. You heard him right here on Beyond the Cage. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Last Samurai UFC. And Luis, thanks again for coming on the show. Billy and I really appreciate it and look forward to having you on again in the near future.
All right, Jim. Thank you for having me, man.
Once again, that was Louis Smolka right here on Beyond the Cage. All right, well, that was Luis. We got to hear what he got to say about his win there at UFC Dublin. We'll get our breakdown of the complete main card coming up here in just a minute. We'll get to some headlines here. Let's start first, Billy. Like I said, Nick Diaz, hashtag Nick Diaz, has come out through his Instagram that the UFC and, of course, their lawyers that they gave Nick Diaz very close to coming to terms with the Nevada State Athletic Commission that could get the Stockton fighter back into the UFC as early as next year.
It's really deserved, and I'm so glad it's happening. I don't know what they did. I don't know if maybe it was just they seen so much of the backlash and they kind of overviewed the whole thing. But either way, I'm so happy that this is all not just another thing. You know, it could have been free Nick Diaz. It fades away and we never see him again, but it actually made a difference. And he's actually hopefully going to fight again soon. I'm really excited for whatever happens in his future. I just hope to see him fight again as soon as possible.
Now, again, it's the lawyers, I think, that are getting this job done. It's amazing how much stuff can get done when you got the right people backing you. And I'm just glad that the UFC is getting this done. So nothing official has been said. It's not like, oh, he's set to return January or anything like that. They're still working on things. But what I'm thinking is, and what the lawyers are probably working on in their deposition of the commission, is saying, while he should have been punished, he was overpunished, and this was a personal vendetta by commission members against their client. And because of that, they can maybe seek a shorter punishment than would have ever been otherwise, regardless of whether there was a sketchy failed test or not.
And they might find a way to be able to just get this whole thing dropped. I mean, if you look at how bad it looked, I mean, I think the athletic commission's in some trouble here.
Right. And, you know, no one huge said they wouldn't fight in Vegas, but still the fact that several fighters wanted to make it known public that they wouldn't fight in the state, I still think says a lot. You add in the past White House petition, everyone and their grandmother seems to think that they did wrong. So
that was what, 100,000 signatures?
Over. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it shattered. I don't think it got 500,000 or anything like that, but it definitely got over the mark.
It's ridiculous, and I think they do. They see the backlash and they realize, all right, maybe it's not just us. If this many people thinks it's wrong, and then he gets the right lawyers, it kind of all fell into place for Nick Diaz, and I'm super excited. And I hope, no matter what happens, if it all gets dropped or if it gets reduced a lot, we get to see him fight again, and we get to see some good fights out of him.
Now, if you haven't checked it out already, last week I got a chance to talk with Bellator and Glory fighter Joe Schilling, who, of course, is good friends and training partners with the Diaz brothers. So I kind of asked him about the situation here. So he was stoked that the UFC is kind of putting some stuff behind him as well. So if you haven't heard that interview already, I'm going to put it in the link in the description for you to check out, too. Joe had a lot of interesting things to say about doing MMA, kickboxing, some stuff I didn't realize, you know, about doing both sports. I think people think that because he does both, you know, he can do them interchangeably. There's not that much different in his game, but he kind of sets in and goes through a couple things that, you know, I wasn't even aware of, telling you that these are two different sports. While, yeah, you can do kickboxing and MMA, the angles and the glove size and the way you can attack people are completely different than what most would do inside a ring in Glory.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's really, honestly, I know he's had his struggles in his last fight and whatnot, but it's amazing him being any successful as he has, being able to just do both sports. So check that interview out. Some really interesting stuff.
So speaking of Bellator, they're at it again, Billy. Their next big event, which is coming up next weekend in St. Louis with the Fan Fest and everything, they've invited along. He was at one time an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, so you got to give him some credit. But former WWE and TNA star Kurt Angle will also be at the Bellator Fan Fest there in St. Louis, which also includes the likes of Kimbo Slice, Tito Ortiz, Ken Shamrock, Hoist Gracie, and Liam McGarry. Also, there is a chance in the same statement that Kurt Angle could face another former WWE superstar and Ken Shamrock. Just in case you're wondering, Kurt Angle is now 46 years old. It's over 20 years since he won that gold medal, or just about close, in Atlanta. And Ken Shamrock is 51. Yeah, I don't know. Bellator's done some crazy things, but I think this is the craziest thing yet.
I have no words. Like, I didn't think Bellator could outdo themselves again. I didn't think they could find a way, and they found a way. And you get 46-year-old Kurt Angle, and I don't even want to talk about it almost. It's so amazing to me. I don't know what's next. Like, where do they go from here?
I don't know. I from what I've seen, some conflicting reports, it says that it may be a deal with Viacom. Of course, Viacom is the one that runs TNA Wrestling, which also airs on Spike TV, and that the deal could be something to a non-fighting role. But if you're going to bring in a guy like Kurt Angle, what other reason would you have him be in your organization other than to fight? I mean, is he going to be on the broadcast with Jimmy? I mean, even though he was an Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling, it's not like a guy that has an extensive MMA background or knowledge. Yeah, he could probably tell you wrestling just as good as anybody, but that's just one aspect of MMA. So I don't know what else. He wouldn't be matchmaker, hype guy. What would he do?
He's Kurt Angle. That is,
and he doesn't suck.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's nothing. It's just Kurt Angle. And Bellator is like, you know what? He wrestled. That's a part of MMA. Let's bring him in, because Bellator does not care anymore. They threw everything out the window, and they're just taking whatever gets a little more viewers or a little more tickets.
Not to mention, they could also have him fight Bobby Lashley, another former WWE guy.
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know. I mean, at this point,
it might as well. Who else is Bobby Lashley fighting?
Yeah. So that's a developing story here as we move along, but we had to pass that.
How long until Bellator does a tag team match? I mean, it's going in that direction where they're going to do something like that soon.
I don't know if that has to get cleared. Is that legal? I don't know how that all works out.
They'll find a way. They'll do it in the middle of nowhere.
They'll get on a ship and sail it to just past the international waters to where they don't need a commission, and then they do it themselves.
They still won't be able to sell tickets. Giving away tickets for the boat.
Let's say somehow I can get one of those like U.S. aircraft carriers or something, like they do the basketball games for college.
If you do Kurt Angle and Ken Shamrock versus Kimbo Slice and Bobby Lashley, I'm in. I'll go to that event. I'll get on that boat.
Oh man. We'll see. It's definitely intriguing. I can say that.
I guess that's the word. I really don't know what to tell you. Like, this makes no sense to me. But hey, I mean, if there's WWE fans or wrestling fans that are also MMA fans, I guess it's a little extra for them. So it's not.
Here's the thing: if it ends up making dollars, it ends up making sense. But if it doesn't, then well, it doesn't, I guess. All right. Speaking of intriguing, we already had a pretty good main event for December 10th, that being Paige Van Zandt against Joanne Calderwood. But unfortunately, Joanne Calderwood had to pull out due to injury here a little over a month, 6 weeks until the fight. She had to pull out due to injury. And we talked about this fighter several times because her fight this past summer got canceled. We thought she would jump in, try to get a quick fight. Eventually, she had to wait all the way until the last pay-per-view we just had here, UFC 192. It was a quick victory, so we thought maybe she'll jump right back in the thick of things, and that's exactly what this fighter is doing. That being Rose Namajunas. She is now in the main event against Paige Van Zandt, so they get to keep that fight, which is good, and it's still exciting, and you can still make a case that the winner gets a shot at the title. It puts them very close to title contention, so to me, it really doesn't lose much, and I think the fact that Rose has fought once in the UFC, was able to get that victory, albeit just over Angela Hill, still got that victory. I think it still sets up a good matchup. I think you and I actually called for a long time ago. Actually, we called for this fight, I think, after Paige won her first fight. Yeah, right after that, I think.
And this is the fight I really wanted to see. And honestly, like, I don't want to see anyone get injured. It stinks Joanne can't be in this fight, but I actually like this matchup better, and I think it's a lot more interesting. I don't know. I got a lot of hype around Rose. She came off that Ultimate Fighter. I think this is a more exciting fight and a better fight, but I can't take any more injuries. I mean, this card last weekend was destroyed. All these fighters keep. I mean, if we're sacrificing it all just so we can get Conor Aldo, I'll take it, I guess. But I don't know why these injuries are getting to be out of hand.
Yeah, the last event was definitely there, and Luis talked about trying to to be in the moment and got there, and he knows he got there because of injuries, and it's not saying he can never main event again or won't ever main event again, but I think that's why he wasn't freaking out, going as crazy as much, because he knew, like, all right, 2 fights had to get canceled for me to be the main event. I was going to be on the main card, but maybe that's why he was as composed as he was, maybe a little different. He gets that call right away, like, hey, you're going to be the main event. It changes your perspective on things.
And he stepped up, so it's like you got to respect to him. And honestly, if they do a UFC Hawaii card now, it's looking real good. I mean, you got talks of BJ Penn coming back. You got Max Holloway's been on a tear. Louis Smolka. I mean, come on.
His training partner, Russell Doan, as well.
100%. And I think if you do see a Hawaii card, you got a perfect main and co-main between Max Holloway and Louis Smolka, right?
Travis Brown.
Another one. I actually forgot about him. So yeah, there's a lot of options, and I like the looks of that card now.
And they can put a lot of the Asian fighters on that card too, because it's a shorter flight. Hawaii is right in between coming to America from Japan or China or Korea or Australia, some of these guys. So it's the perfect stop for a lot of those guys too. So it really is the perfect destination, I think, for a fight. And there's also names that we haven't mentioned. Kendall Grove obviously has ties. He's from Hawaii. Chris Lieben trained out there for many, many years. Probably missing some other guys that are from there as well. But there's been enough guys through the years that have come through Hawaii that makes you think, how have they not been there? I mean, they've now been to Ireland, I think, 2 or 3 times, and they haven't been to Hawaii once.
It's crazy to me, and if they book that, I'd fly out to that card immediately.
Right, and it's not like there's not places to have the fight. I mean, there definitely are. Obviously, the University of Hawaii would probably be like maybe the first destination to have. Of course, if they wanted to make it really big, they could have it at the football stadium for University of Hawaii, Aloha Stadium, if they wanted to do it that big. But I mean, there's definitely places to do an event there.
On second thought, I know I'm promoting this Hawaii event. Come to Detroit first and then go to Hawaii, though. I don't want to promote Hawaii too much because then we might skipped over again. So come to Detroit, then do a Hawaii card.
All right. Well, again, that's the new main event. Should be exciting. So let's continue on. We already talked about the news about Bellator, so let's get to the fight they had this past weekend. Started off with a very, very exciting fighter in Michael Page as he took on Charlie Ontiveros. Did he get a first-round finish? Another one? Yes. Was it the most explosive Michael Venom Page we've seen? No.
The elbows were nasty, though.
Yeah, they were nasty elbows. To me, the stoppage was justified. But the one thing I'd like to see Page do, and they mentioned this on the broadcast again, that he's looking for that one shot. He's looking for that one big shot. He's not trying to follow up combos. And to me, that's really the biggest criticism I have for him, is the fact he's not setting anything up. He's just going to try to throw one shot. And I think that volume, that lack of volume, could get him in trouble against other guys that are maybe putting more pressure out there, maybe going a little more balls to the wall, as they say, and that could get him in trouble as he moves up in competition. I think that's one thing that he has to change is, you don't have to throw everything 100%, but you got to have a little more volume. You got to get people, thinking a little more, and those are fights where you can get outpointed. Even though if you're landing the harder shots, you can lose just because simply the other guy is being more active. Speaking in case of another Bellator fighter, kind of like Emmanuel Newton. That's why he wins a lot of his fights, because he just keeps doing work.
As much as I want to agree, and I do think that might be a problem with him in the future, I just can't say it until we see it. It's like he keeps getting these finishes. He's so exciting. Everything this dude does, like you can probably look, whenever I started on this show, I was preaching Michael Page to everyone. But my main criticism, and it might not be his fault, because I'm sure he's trying to get all the big fights he can. Why are they not giving this dude a title shot or anything? Like, they keep giving him anybody. Like, he needs to fight bigger competition. That's the only thing I can criticize him for.
And that'll bring me to my next point, and we're going to skip over one fight just a second. We'll get back to it. But this is a guy I think he should have been matched up with probably last year, 2 years ago, and hopefully now can get matched up, and that's Brennan Ward. Another great performance by him. Again, maybe not the highest competition, but when you don't take on competition that's as high as maybe you are, you take them out quickly. And that's exactly what Brennan Ward did, the hometown guy there in Connecticut, as he took out Dennis Olsen. Just another fantastic performance. He looked good. And to me, that is a fight I want to see. Michael Page against Brennan Ward, #1 contender. Winner gets a shot at the title. It should have happened already. Hopefully now with them having both first-round knockouts on the same card, it lines up right, and we can get that, and the winner of that can face Korjakov.
I 100% agree, and I like that because for both these guys, they do need that fight. And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what Michael Page is doing. I wonder if he has so many fights on his Bellator contract, and he's like, I'm gonna knock out every nobody I can, get my stock up, go to the UFC, and get a big fight. But no, I really want to see that matchup, and that'll be a good fight for both those guys. And Brendan Ward, like you said, I mean, you go out there, people expect a big knockout. Sometimes people don't pull through; they still put on boring fights, but he got the job done. He finished. So.
And he's a guy, of course, that already has fought for Bellator world titles. He took on Alexander Shlemenko. So he's a guy that's been close to the top. And I still think that he was doing well in that fight until he got caught, I believe, with the submission. So he's a guy I think now at 170 for a couple fights. I think he's a very dangerous guy. And I think that he can actually put a fight to Lima or Korjakov, who have been the top two guys in the division for the last year or two for Bellator.
Yeah, I like it 100%, but like you said, I want to see that matchup made, and then we'll see where it goes. But either of these guys need to just take that. They're both the best for each other. I don't know how many fights Michael Page has had in Bellator now. I think it's like 4 or 5. Maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe it's only like 3, but I feel like it's been enough to where he's got to be getting these #1 contender fights.
This was Michael Page's 4th fight in Bellator, his 3rd first-round knockout. The only one that wasn't, of course, was the guy who was probably the best guy he's ever fought there in Nashan Burrell, former Strikeforce fighter.
It looked like he took a Bellator fight and then left and came back.
Nope, that's true. That is his 4th win in a row. He had a fight in the Super Fight League in 2003, which kind of split his attempt there, his debut at Bellator 93. So he's had 5 Bellator fights, 4 first-round knockouts against, like I said, just the one guy who was good in Nashan Burrell. So definitely ready for step up in competition. And looking at Brennan Ward, like I said, he had that fight against Alexander Shlemenko. He had I'm not calling a fluke because Tamir Corey's done pretty well since coming back, but kind of got caught there. But since then has had 3 fights, has been all first-round finishes. To me, that just sets up so nicely for those two to fight each other.
2 with at least 3 first-round finishes in a row. It's not a better matchup you can make.
All right, let's get to the other fight we had to skip over for just a second. It was in the bantamweight division as Gouti Yamaguchi took on Iso Kobayashi. And a lot of people were talking about Kobayashi and his striking. Not a lot of people talking about Yamaguchi. And, boy, he went in there and just dominated Kobayashi from start to finish with his grappling. Eventually worked to get in a rear naked choke in the 3rd round at the 350 marker. And he is a guy who owns a victory over Mike Richman, a very talented bantamweight fighter. So with his ground skills, he puts himself, I'm sorry, this was in the featherweight division. So that was against Mike Richman. Sorry, I got the 2 divisions mixed up, but with his grappling skills, he puts himself to me right in the title picture at 145. Again, a very tough division in Bellator, arguably their best, but I think this victory really launches him up there. And I know we got Strauss and Pitbull coming up, but maybe a fight against, I think Daniel Weichel also has a fight coming up. So unfortunately can't get one of those guys, but maybe somebody like a Pat Curran. We saw Matt Bissett, I think, have a good fight on this card as well. They showed his undercard fight, somebody like that. And then maybe he can get into the title picture because his grappling skills looked incredible. And this guy's only 22 years old.
I was just going to say, not to mention
19-2 with 15 submission victories. I think this kid can make some waves here in this Bellator featherweight division.
That's the point I was waiting to make. Look at how dominant he was. He gets the finish, 19-2, and he's 22 years old. I mean, in a tough division, you still got a really bright prospect in this kid.
Now, he does have he lost to Rodrigo Carvalho back early on in his career. Then he went on a huge winning streak, including his entry into Bellator before losing last year to Will Martinez. But other than that, he beat Mike Richman, like I said, a very solid competitor. He submitted Martin Stapleton, and then this fight here against Kobayashi, who I think a lot of people might have had as the favorite with his knockout power, and he kind of proved them wrong in this one.
Back-to-back rear naked chokes. I'm so excited right now for MMA. I mean, you got all these kids that are so dominant and good, and he's 22. I can't wait to see him in the future.
Also, I would just saw this. I'm going to give honorable mention to Matt Secor, former Ultimate Fighter guy, getting a win on the undercard as well.
Yeah, he's going to fight Kurt Angle now.
Might as well. All right, let's get to the main event. As I alluded to earlier, an upset. And I think a huge upset, as Rafael Cavallo not just beat Brandon Halsey, but knocked him out in the second round. And this was a fight where I think a lot of people knew if it stayed standing, which probably wasn't going to be the case, Cavallo could have a chance to win. I mean, this is a guy who has beat Joe Schilling, beat Brian Rogers, has beaten some good guys, has not lost since his MMA debut in 2011. A guy that also has just incredible power. I mean, 10 knockouts out of 12 victories. This was a guy.
Body kick. He can knock you out with anything.
Yeah. So this is a guy that definitely presented problems for Halsey, but the question was, could he keep it standing long enough to get one of those shots? And the question was yes. Or the answer was yes to this question. And to Halsey's credit, he dominated in the first round. He had him. He did exactly what we thought he was going to do. Pressure him, not let him breathe, not get that separation to land one of those power shots. Then in round two, kind of went away for just a second, and that's all Cavallo needed. Landed the toes, if you can see my hand, the toes pointing right into the liver, and it just shut Halsey down. Cavallo jumped on him, and then Dan Mergliotta had to stop this one at the 142 marker, and just like that, Cavallo becomes the Bellator middleweight champion. And to me, just a huge upset, because to me, this was definitely Halsey's fight to lose.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like you said, he comes out, sticks to the game plan, has a good round, but you fade for a second to find an opening. I mean, a body kick, like his record's so impressive. He's gonna knock you out with anything. I don't know what to say. Bellator, like these events are weird because they got all these huge ones and then they got little ones like this, but these ones I feel like they pay off the most almost.
This was a great finish to this fight.
If you look at all this main card, I mean, what a great card.
Yeah, you had the 3 knockouts, and I even thought the Yamauchi fight was actually a pretty entertaining fight because he was trying to finish the whole time up until he got the finish. It wasn't just simply him staying in guard, landing pitter-patter punches or anything, and then eventually wore down the guy to submission. No, he almost finished it probably 5 times before he finally got Kobayashi. So Cavallo is now the champion. I think Halsey, they said it during the broadcast that this fight had to get canceled, and he's had to cancel other fights because he feels weak in his joints when he cuts to 185. And I think Halsey, enough is enough. He just can't fight at 185 anymore. I think his body is starting to deteriorate. This is a guy who's he's not even that old. And see, that's why I think it's not like he's an old guy trying to last time. He's 29 years old. This was only his 10th professional fight. He's 6 foot, wouldn't be a super short light heavyweight, but I think he's just got to move up to 205 if he wants to stick around because his body has just taken too much of a toll trying to cut that weight.
If that's ever the case where you honestly feel joints weak, blah, blah, it's going to cost you fights, don't do it. It's not good. I don't know what they got to do to change with the weight cutting and everything, but it's getting to be too much.
I just think he has to go up to 205, and honestly, I think that's a better move. The competition is not that much greater in Bellator right now, and to me, you could I wouldn't even be surprised. To me, I don't even think it's that much of a stretch if for Liam McGarry to have his next fight be against Brandon Halsey. I could book that fight if I was Bellator, and I would feel fine with it because Halsey's going to show. He's going to show up on weight. He's going to even have more conditioning. His pressure presents a problem to Liam McGarry, and even though McGarry has a good ground game, it's a nice battle. And to me, it's a great fight to have. Of course, I think Phil Davis gets it first, being the tournament winner, but put Halsey against King Mo because King Mo should have fought there in the final against Phil Davis but got hurt. So maybe Halsey King Mo coming up.
Yeah, I like that fight a lot. And like you said, for McGarry, obviously Phil Davis deserves it at the moment. But if they schedule that, by no means would I be like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, no, it'd be a good fight. And yeah, I don't know. I wish more fighters would take the Frankie Edgar approach. Maybe, I don't know. When you fight more natural, not cutting as much, there can be good results. I don't know, but I hope to see more of it.
Right, and this is a guy that Bellator has developed. I mean, he first signed in 2013, has won every fight except this one. So this is a guy, obviously, Bellator is wants to have around. And I think if he wants to have a career, just move up to 205, at least test the waters for your next fight until you can kind of figure things out. So maybe kind of a self-placed moving up, because again, he shouldn't have lost the belt, so to speak, if he wouldn't have missed weight in his last fight against Kendall Grove. So looking forward, though, real quickly for the middleweight division, Rafael Carvalho. Kendall Grove had to fight him overweight. He just had a great knockout victory over Joey Beltran. Maybe Kendall Grove gets right back in the mix here, and he gets the next or the first crack rather at Carvalho.
Definitely wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, Kendall Grove's one of those guys where he's been around, he knows the game, he had a tough fight, but I definitely would like to see that fight.
All right, enough of Bellator here. Let's move to UFC Fight Night Dublin. 4 fights were shown here on the main card for UFC Fight Pass. The first fight of the evening was in the flyweight division as Neil Suri took on John Dolos Reyes. And this was a fight, Billy, where Reyes just couldn't react quick enough to Neil Suri. Neil Suri was just at him full force with punches, with grappling. And just Delos Reyes was just never really able to get in that rhythm and quite figure out Neil Suri coming forward and obviously the damage he was doing. And eventually Reyes, maybe some desperation, tried to shoot in for a takedown. Suri tried it early in the fight, dropping the guard for a guillotine. Didn't work out. Second time around in the second round, it did, as he gets the tap at 4-12 in the second round. And a nice bounce back victory for him, because he lost to the main event guy, our friend Louis Smolka, in his last fight.
Yeah, it's a good bounce back. He just seemed like another level above him, and then he shoots in desperation and gets it. But, I mean, there's not much to say about this fight. What I want to talk about is the biggest upset in MMA history that happened on the prelims of this card. When the GOAT, Cathal Pendred, was that on the undercard, right?
Yes.
Just to be clear, the greatest of all time gets knocked out pretty bad. I don't know who's seen that coming. I'm done with MMA. There was one safe bet on this card, and he gets butchered.
Yeah, he did. Speaking of moving up, he might be a guy that has to move up. I think that weight cut takes a lot out of Cathal. I think he's going to have to move up to 185.
It definitely looks like he sucks everything out of him to get that weight. But, I mean, either way, I'm blown away. To knock Cathal out, I want a title shot for Breeze, at least.
Speaking of the undercard real quickly, Darren Elkins, another dominating victory. He just beats the lower level guys of this division. That's kind of been his, I mean, that's really what it is. Like, anytime he's taking on an elite guy or near elite guy, he loses. He takes on someone lower, dominates them, and another unanimous decision victory for him.
Classic gatekeeper.
Speaking of Ireland, the Ireland fans were happy, at least with this one, as Aisling Daly was able to get her first win, or second win in the UFC. Rather, that's right, she won an Ultimate Fighter finale as she defeated Erica Almeida by unanimous decision. Also, our boy from Scotland, Stevie Ray, a.k.a. Braveheart, another good performance as he gets, wasn't a finish this time, but another victory, his third straight so far here in the UFC, and he looked pretty good against Mikhail Labout.
Yeah, he looked really good, and I mean, we kind of got a little hype on him in the last big fight he won, so I'm really excited for him, and he's just coming out and living up to that hype.
He's already talking about his next fight on the London, England card in February, which probably going to be where he's fighting next. So
I look forward to seeing it. Yeah, I want to see him anytime. I think he might be a star.
All right, our next fight ended in a draw as Nicholas Dalby took on Darren Till. I was rather surprised when the decision came down as a majority draw. Looking at this fight, I really thought Darren Till had control of the first 2 rounds. He outstruck him 26-15 in the first round, and then 18, he got outstruck by 4 in the second round, did Till, but I thought he landed still the better power shots, was being more elusive. And then the third round, I think Dalby sensed that he had to do something to get a victory, that Till probably was up 2-0, and just put it all on the line there. I mean, he just completely blitzkrieg Till. I just think was not expecting that at all, because no indications in this fight showed that Dalby could do this, as he outstruck him 78-9 with 2 takedowns. I mean, clearly won that third round. You look at those stats, you could see how the judges maybe even could have scored that a 10-8.
Is that I didn't see the official cards. Is that how it scored?
It scored 29-28 in favor of Till So one judge gave him, as I thought, the first 2 rounds, then the next one. Then the last 2 judges both scored at 28-28. So I don't think it was because of an 8-round. What I'm guessing is they maybe gave a second round a 9-9. Also could have been the case.
I do want to see more of that too.
Either way, it goes down to majority draw with 2 of the judges giving it. But I think this is a case of, Dalby maybe waiting too long to do something in the fight. And then you could look at Darren Till. Never was he doing good in the first 2 rounds? Yes. But it wasn't doing anything to really hurt Dalby. And that was the thing. He didn't amp up his performance as the fight went out. He kind of stayed the same, even keeled. And I think because of that, Dalby really took advantage, as we saw in the 3rd round. A draw for both gentlemen, but I think Darren Till, maybe if anything, I think learned a little more in this fight because I think he ended up losing this fight by having such a bad 3rd round. I give all the credit in the world to Dalby, but to me, Till kind of almost made this fight a draw.
Never coast at the end. I mean, we were kind of talking about going into this fight how much of a coin flip it was. I think we picked the opposite just because, and it kind of showed. And like these guys, you just can't let the fight slip away from you.
And again, like I said, Dalby still has something to take away with it too. But for him, I don't feel as egregious. He just couldn't figure out Till, and then just at the end, he's just like, all right, I'm gonna go out there. If I get knocked out, I get knocked out. I'm gonna lose anyway. And that's something maybe you think, well, I'm just start a little earlier.
Yeah, but I respect that too, and I love it. Go on your shield. A lot of fighters, they're down, but they still try and, I don't know, play it too safe. So he went out there and went for it, and probably earned himself a draw because of it, not a loss. So good on him.
Next fight, Norman Park, Reza Madadi. As we mentioned, we weren't thrilled about Norman Park. We've been critical of Norman Park, saying he's kind of been a boring fighter. He's probably going to get the victory, but let's see if he can be flashy. That's the real test for us here to see if Norman Park's ready for kind of the next level. And I didn't see that. Did he get a victory? Did he beat a game opponent who has had some big victories? I mean, let's not forget, Madadi submitted Michael Johnson. This is a guy that's legit. So for Park to go in there and get a victory is a big deal, but he's got to just be a little more flashy. He's got to do a little more output. It was a victory, yes, but to me, this was more of Madadi just being bad in this fight, I think, than it was Norman Park being superior to him.
I don't have much to break down. This fight is exactly what we said, kind of. Norman Park he gets by. But I will say he tricked me because I watched the weigh-ins, and they were going at it in the weigh-ins, and I'm like, you know what? This is going to be Norman Park. This is going to be his exciting come-out fight. And went out there and did the same thing. He wins. He moves forward. But in the UFC right now, with all these new stars and all these up-and-comers, you just, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not enough, because if you can win that long, you'll get there, but it's almost not enough.
Right. And for Madadi, maybe because of all that hype, that emotional energy he had invested, maybe that's why we saw him have somewhat of an adrenaline dump. Dan Hardy talked about it on the broadcast, saying, this is a guy who's beat, like I said, he submitted Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson's one of the top 10 guys in the world, and Madadi beat him. So you would think that he would definitely have a chance to beat Norman Park, and maybe that energy dump, or I don't know. I mean, obviously 1 of 12 on takedowns is not going to help you, and just maybe wrong strat. I don't know what it was, but he didn't, to me, show up there in Dublin. And for Norman Park, we mentioned a young guy earlier in Stevie Ray. Maybe Park, Stevie Ray for England coming up in February.
You think they'll put them against each other?
Norman Park's a step above guys Ray's fought, but not so far above him that you don't think Ray could win.
Yeah, 100%. I would.
You know
honestly,
what I mean?
I'm gonna be honest. I would pick Stevie in that fight, but I don't know if they're doing a card over there. If they'll put them against each other, they'll put them against 2 Americans or something.
It could happen, but I'm just saying that you look at the progression of Stevie Ray. I think that's a nice fight. It's not someone too over his level or perceived to be over his level. Like if you gave him someone like, just throwing out a name, like Edson Barboza or something for his next fight.
Give Norman Park Edson Barboza. Let's see what he's made of. I don't know. If you're gonna get by that way, I feel like it's like just, hey, throw him to the best, see if they can hang in.
Another guy really I think could maybe go either way. You could Park or Ray, Francisco Trinaldo.
Yeah.
Just because and Trinaldo has knocking off Laprise, tough winner. He faced Norman Park.
I was gonna say
tough winner, or even Stevie Ray. Kind of go either way.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought right there, but 100%.
All right, let's get to the main event. We just talked to the winner here, Louis Smolka, and I don't want to sound too biased in the interview. I don't want to gush too much over his performance, but I just thought, and I asked him in one of the questions, though, if he thought that this fight kind of proved to the rest of the division that if you thought grappling was his weakness, I think he kind of proved a lot of people wrong, and that's how I felt in this fight, is that he knew Houlihan was going to come at him, attack him with the grappling. He wasn't going to try to stand with Smolka, which has been his bread and butter since coming into the UFC, and really test him there and see what the kid from Hawaii was made of. And not only did he hold up, to me, he passed the test. He took everything Houlihan threw at him. He was able to then, like I said, he wasn't waiting for the one moment, as he mentioned in the interview. He was waiting for a moment to turn the table. He found that moment, did it, got on top, just started landing bombs on Houlihan. And he just couldn't really recover. And then you saw Smolka sneak in the rear naked choke there to get the tap at 4:09 in round number 2 to have the crowd go dead silent in Dublin. And I just thought that, to me, this was his best performance in the cage. And he did it against a top-notch opponent in the main event in his hometown. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better victory and performance by Louis Smolka.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can say whatever you want. He didn't deserve it. It wasn't supposed to be a main event, but whatever happens, he gets in the main event slot. He goes against the hometown guy, and he pulls it off in impressive fashion. I mean, this kid's stringing together a string of wins where I wouldn't be surprised in 2 or 3 fights you see title fights. Like, it's only going to get higher from here. When you end up in a main event slot, pull a big win, and Houlihan is no joke. Like, I don't want to say people undermine him, but he's no joke. He's a serious opponent and a top guy, and to get this win is huge for Smolka in a main event slot. I mean, when you beat Brad Pitt from Snatch, that dude's undefeated.
Right. Now, we mentioned the Smolka, Sergio Pettis, and Ray Borg, but he thought that the UFC may try to give him more of a top contender. And a guy that I think has maybe crossed over from prospect to contender, considering he's already had a title shot, is Kaji Horiguchi. And I think that's a big matchup that could happen next as well, Smolka against Horiguchi.
I want to see where's Ian McCall at right now?
Who knows? I'm going to be honest. I have no idea. He's just playing with his mustache.
Never mind. I don't know why I asked. Like, people would know where Ian McCall's at right now. But I would like to see that fight a lot for him also. But Horiguchi'd be a good one. There's a lot of good guys. Luckily for them, Mighty Mouse has left a large amount of guys that you can say, hey, this guy fought for a title. So he's fighting, So
right.
Good for Smolka. He has about 10 guys he can fight that's a title shot contender. So
right. And for Mighty Mouse, again, I don't even know who's next for him, really.
To me, you have to go up and fight the winner of Cruz Dillashaw. But the only problem is he's more established than they are. Like, if they were both, if Dillashaw can knock out Cruz, I think that fight has to happen. Dillashaw versus Mighty Mouse. There's no way around it. If Cruz beats Dillashaw, A, we'll probably see a rematch. B, they'll probably make him defend it a couple times. And, I mean, he did already fight Mighty Mouse, so that might – that's all that's left for him.
Now, we talked about injuries leading to Smolka being in the main event against Houlihan, and it happened, I think, just as we went off the air last week. The guy who was supposed to be in the co-main event, Stipe Miocic, we kind of mentioned, who knows how long he'll be out for. Maybe it's a quick turnaround. We can only hope. Well, and not that long for him to wait. He got an opponent almost immediately, as he's now taking on Andrei Arlovski as part of the New Year's Eve card there, with Robbie Lawler going up against Carlos Condit January 2nd. And, man, if I'm Ben Rothwell, how do you feel if you're Ben Rothwell? I mean, you go from being in the co-main event, a big fight for you, a fight to kind of get your name back into the swing of things that you were kind of when you first got into the UFC, you were thought of a top contender. You're now on the cusp of getting right back to that status, and it's kind of just taken away from you because the other guy got hurt, and somehow he gets rewarded for facing Andrei Arlovski. I'm not saying it's a bad fight for the UFC make or a wrong fight to make, but I don't know. I just felt like if you're giving anybody Andrei Arlovski, shouldn't you be giving Ben Rothwell that fight?
I absolutely agree. I think it's disrespectful to Ben Rothwell. He did everything right. He earned the fights. He stayed healthy. He did everything right. Miocic ends up getting injured, and he gets the bigger whatever fight you want to call it out of it, and Rothwell does it. So if I'm Rothwell, I'm really upset. I think he did take to Twitter. I don't know, whatever that matters. But, I mean, man, it's not right for him at all. But either way, who knows? They might also have a big fight for Rothwell planned. We'll see what happens.
Because with Stipe now taking Andre Arlovski, we already have JDS over him. Of course, we know Verdum and Velasquez are going to fight at some point. Whenever.
Maybe.
We already have Mirko Krokop has a fight booked up.
All right, I got an option.
You look at Mark Hunt's fighting Bigfoot Silva coming up. Sol Paleli just retired.
They're saying
Big Nog retired. Like,
hear me out. They're saying that Jadeep Singh he wasn't good enough for Fedor.
Okay, that's a good
He's
one.
good enough for Rothwell. So if they scrap that because everyone was mad, I think he deserves the Rothwell fight.
Oh man. Maybe seriously though, maybe Stefan Struve. Maybe.
Big maybe.
A stretch, maybe. Or guy who just beat Sean Jordan, was that Magomedov, right?
Oh yeah. He got a couple big wins in there.
He could possibly be in there because that was, I thought, a big victory over Sean Jordan. But to me, those still pale into comparison of fighting Andre Arlovski or Stipe Miocic.
There's not a fight they can make. I don't know.
Because you're trying to get someone off a win form. There's a couple of, there's Frank Mir, but he's coming off a loss.
That's the only
is
one
that,
I can think of. But even
is that
yeah.
attractive of a fight?
I don't know. If someone wakes Todd Duffy up, even he's off. Give him something. I don't know.
Oh man, I don't know. Well, again, he got kind of screwed there. So, all right.
Cathal?
Cathal will move up to heavyweight.
Yeah, he's been cutting too much anyway. He can just fight his natural weight.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we end the show this week?
Now that Nick Diaz's stuff's all coming together, I have nothing to say anymore. I guess someone booked Jadeep Singh a new fight in a big one.
All right. He is Billy Brant. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrant21. As I mentioned, I have down below in the comments my interview with Joe Schilling, who was victorious at Glory 24. And he also kind of talked about when he won't fight in Bellator next, too.
I don't mean to cut you off, and this is to start now and you're about to go off. I read today that Spike TV has cut Glory, and they're not going to broadcast anymore.
Really? I did not see that.
Just read it, and I'm pretty mad about it because you know how much I love Glory.
Yeah.
And I hope they find a new play. I don't know. Showtime, mate. Well, did they already try it? I don't know. Somewhere hopefully picks them up, though, because I really like Glory, and they put on a lot of exciting events.
Yeah, that I didn't hear about that. So that's
I think
big
it
news.
just broke before we went on. I remember seeing it.
Okay. Well, we got some time here. We're live. It's our show. Let's double check this here. So we'll do that. Of course, next week's show, we are going to have our complete preview of UFC Fight Night 77, which will be Vitor Belfort against Dan Henderson for the third time.
Yeah.
And speaking of Vitor Belfort, of course, he met with presidential hopeful Dr. Ben Carson before one of the debates. I thought that was two very interesting guys to meet up before a presidential debate, wouldn't you say?
That is strange for Vitor. Another thing, I don't want to bring up other shows, but he was supposed to do an MMA podcast. Did you see this at all? And he tried talking to the guy that does a podcast before and saying, I don't want you to ask me these questions. So they end up saying like, no, I am going to ask you these questions. It's my job. So Vitor didn't do the show, and that got out there. So I don't know what's happening to Vitor, man.
Now, I have been asked, I'll speak candidly here, what questions I will ask a fighter, just kind of the general overlay, which I have no problem disclosing so they know what I'm going to ask, so they're kind of prepared. I'm not throwing any curveballs in there that they weren't prepared for, but I've never been specifically asked to not ask a fighter a certain question. I've never been asked that. Maybe at one point in my career I'll encounter that, but at least to date, and you've seen, all you listeners know, I've seen how many interviews we've done here on the show, never have had that happen.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's just I love Vitor so much, but there's so many things coming out about him now and all this stuff. I don't know, man. Honestly, for him and Dan Henderson, I vote we just don't test anyone. We just see who wins there.
All right, now this is MMAfighting.com. It is confirmed Glory will no longer air events on Spike TV. They have ran over a dozen events dating back to 2013, and it will no longer air the top kickboxing organization. Of course, they had the huge Dynamite card. They've also had, Joe Schilling and, on the last card. Apparently only drew 283,000 viewers on average. Again, that wasn't supposed to be as big of a fight as it could have been. He was supposed to take on Artem Levin for the middleweight title. Got canceled again, going to my interview that I had with him. And at least according to this report on MMA Fighting, I think this was Luke. Was it Luke Bryan? Luke Thomas? Luke Bryan's the singer.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, Luke Thomas. Luke Thomas.
Luke Bryan.
Yeah, sorry, Luke Bryan. There, you got mentioned in the same breath as Luke Thomas. So, it's a shot to his ego. According to representatives with the network, the decision to no longer air Glory is not sudden. Talks between Glory and Spike were already ongoing, but no agreement could be reached before their contract expired. In conjunction with PPC Boxing and Bellator MMA, Glory Kickboxing was a component of the Friday Night Lights Out. When contacted by MMA Fighting for comment, Glory President John Franklin said the search for a U.S. broadcast partner continues. The one interesting thing I will say about this is with the advance in streaming platforms, not just what we're doing right here on YouTube. There's that Crackle out there. There's Hulu. There's ways for them to still stay on the U.S. radar without being on a TV channel. If they got to go somewhere first and then kind of expand. And to be honest, this is even something, if I'm the UFC,
I was just going to say,
the UFC Fight Pass, I think this is a great thing to have on there as well. And that could be an option, at least. Again, it doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It doesn't mean they never get back to broadcast television here in the United States. But I'm just saying, for the meantime, there's ways to put it on streaming. I still think can get to the viewers and have probably just as much success as 283 people tuning in on Friday night on Spike TV.
And to me, I think it'd be, if the UFC could do that for Fight Pass, it'd be huge, because this, even though it wasn't the most successful on Spike, it was a mainstream, pretty, I love to watch them. I look forward to all of them. And you develop this good thing with fighters like Joe Schilling or something that are exciting and can maybe dip their feet in the water of the UFC. But if they got that on Fight Pass, I would be really excited for. I mean, it sucks it's not on Spike anymore, but it's huge for Fight Pass in my eyes.
Now, this is one thing because of this. I wonder if this will affect them doing another Dynamite card. This puts that kind of in jeopardy.
Yeah, I don't know how that would all work.
I don't think that's probably going to be likely, at least with Glory. Maybe another organization similar, but probably not with Glory. And I also wonder,
UFC Dynamite.
Maybe I should have waited a week to get Joe Schilling. I could have asked him, how does this affect his relationship between the two organizations? But
man, can we get him back? That's a good question now.
But it just makes it interesting. Of course, they had a big event coming up November 6th, which was supposed to air on that, but I guess it's now going to go on the Glory website, which in the short term is fine. And of course, we'll talk about those events. So hopefully, as Joe was talking about, he can get that December fight in Amsterdam, fighting Artem Levin for the middleweight title.
Man, what a fight. And if they find somewhere else in such a short amount of time to get a broadcast, that's a great first fight to start it off with.
All right, well, after some sudden and unexpected news there, now we will get ready to close the show. Again, he is Billy Brant. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrant21. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. Once again, we want to thank some of our partners here. AJ Hiller at MMAsignatures.com. You can follow him on Twitter at AJ MMA Signatures. Of course, check out his website, MMASignaturesUSA.com, #1 destination for MMA memorabilia. Also thank our friends at MMAinsider.net and MMAforlife.ca. Also our friends at Top Rated MMA as well. And let's thank Mr. Louis Smolka for coming on the show. Once again, appreciate taking time out of his schedule to come and talk with us here this afternoon.
Also, I'm not sure why, but I want to thank Kurt Angle. Just for being him. That's it.
Is it at Kurt Angle? I'm not sure.
At Kurt Angle. Thank you.
All right. For Billy Brant, I am Jim Graham, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.